All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the August 16th, 2023 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors meeting to order at 7 p.m. In attendance are myself, Chairman David Gerstenhaber, Vice Chair D, and Supervisors Dowling and Torres. Also in attendance are Township Solicitor Guy Donatelli and Melissa Reinstadler. Did I say that right? Yes. All right, first try. Our MS4 consultant, Andrew Tuilea, Township Operations Manager, Jeff Eastburn, Township Controller, Office Manager, Melissa Ortega, and Township Secretary, Stacy Hollis. And there looks like there is two members of the public in attendance. And I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so before I go to public comment, I just want to mention that the board had an executive session on July 26th to discuss our township representation. Just for everybody's information, there's not going to be any major changes. However, we will be seeing Melissa joining our meetings as well as she kind of learns the ropes and gets involved in some of the day-to-day work that we do here at the township. So welcome, Melissa. And now I will open it to public comments. Public comment may include any comments relating to tonight's agenda items. Commenters must state your name, whether you are a resident of the township or a non-resident taxpayer in the township. If you do not identify yourself, your comments will not be included in the official minutes. Do we have any public comment? All right, with that, we'll move on to Donna.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to make a motion that the board approve the July 19th, 2023 Board of Supervisor meeting minutes. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, David. Any discussion? All right, not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed, say nay. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wondered, is Melissa available to give the treasurer's report? Is she
She's
on?
mute.
Hi, Dawn. I'm here. Hello?
We just need you to read the treasurer's report.
Yeah, sure. The July 2023 Treasurer's Report includes the following disbursements. The general fund with disbursements and transfers of $427,640.07. The Park and Recreation Fund with disbursements of $12,573.70. The Open Space Fund with disbursements of $49,771.46. The Capital Reserve Fund with disbursements of $273,872.85. The Emergency Services Fund with disbursements of $0. The Fire Hydrant Fund with disbursements of $580.80, leaving a balance in all funds of $2,254,489.79.
Thank you, Melissa. I make a motion that the board approve the July 2023 treasurer's report as presented by Melissa Ortega. Can I have a second? Thank you, Stefan. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
So before we move on, I guess I should have said there was some discussion. This is not necessarily have anything to do with this month's treasurer's report, but we had a question from a township resident this week about ARPA funds and how the township had decided to spend those ARPA funds. I think for those of you who were listening and attending board meetings when we got word that we'd receive a pretty significant amount of money from this ARPA, we had a lot of interesting and creative ideas on how to spend it. The initial guidance was wide open. You could spend it on open space projects. You could spend it on AV projects, things that would help people rebuild and get people outside in this post-COVID or during this COVID world. And as the money was beginning to get dispersed, the rules started to get tightened, and there were a lot of restrictions on how we could spend that money. And so basically, we went through the Department of Treasury guidelines, and the most appropriate use of those funds for our township was our stormwater remediation projects. And so that's what we decided to do. We've received a total of $475,634.95 from the ARPA funds. We have spent $397,151.16 of that money doing these stormwater remediation projects. And then currently left over, we have $78,483.79. And so, again, this is money the township would have spent regardless. So this money was well spent and responsibly spent. Unfortunately, when we first received it, we thought, wow, look at all these wonderful things we can do with this money. But reality soon set in. And so it really restricted what we could and couldn't do with the funds. So I just wanted to get that on the record. I know one of the residents was interested to know. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that topic.
Is there, Chairman, is there the 78,000? Are there other opportunities for stormwater remediation, or are there other plans?
Go ahead.
This year, we're hoping to spend that on the Mackey project that we had talked about from Mackey Court to Franklin Road. That should have been surveyed today. So we're going to be laying the course to get that done this year.
So Jeff, can any of that be used for MS4, or is there a different type, or should we wait for the Arrow discussion?
I would wait for Mr. Andrew to talk on that.
And I mean, I think the general answer to your question would be yes, there's always a stormwater project. You know, I mean, it's kind of goes hand in hand with the road program, really. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. We can move on, Stefan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to introduce Jeff Eastburn to provide some information on bid packages.
Sure, I would be happy to. I have been contacted by KMC, who has been doing the mowing work for Crossan Park in the office. They are willing to extend their contract. We do have a provision in the bid that we did earlier this year, late last year, and they are willing to keep the same pricing. So I feel they do a good job. I would ask for a head nod from the board if you're okay with us extending it for next year. The other two items I wanted to talk about was the snow plowing bid package and the 2024 interim road maintenance program bid package. The interim road bid package had a major overhaul last year. I don't anticipate that changing very much, and I'm anticipating the snow plowing to be pretty much the same. My goal, if I can get it done, I'd like to get them advertised and awarded at the October meeting, just to get ahead of the game before I go away at the end of the year.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, please ask them.
So I have a couple. The first one is on the snow plowing budget. Can you remind me how, so we usually have earmarked something like $200,000 in the budget every year for snow maintenance and removal, something like that, some pretty high number. Does that just get rolled over year?
Well, I want to bring
No,
Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, it just goes, so at the end of the year, it just gets cycled back into
It drops into the general fund?
General fund. Yeah, it just drops back into the general fund, and then then I'll build my budget for 2024 based upon that.
Okay. And then the second question I have is on the interim road program. We used the robotics service about 4 years ago now, I think, right? It was about 3 or 4 years ago. And we were kind of saying, hey, it's not every year, but every 3 or 4 years, we should do it again. This might be a time to do it again.
I spoke to them this afternoon.
All right.
I'm hoping, Dave, my goal is for sometime next week to start
Awesome.
to do
Excellent.
that.
Yeah, and so for those of you who aren't familiar, robotics is a pretty nice road evaluation tool. Essentially, you have a camera on your dashboard, a cell phone camera. You drive the roads. It uploads images, I don't know, at some frequency every few seconds.
It saves them to the cell phone, and then 1 or 2 times during the day, it's always good to come back here, and then I can upload it and then go again.
And when we're further along in the process, we'll demonstrate kind of the information that comes out of this. But you get basically a road health, the health of a road map and the health of all of your roads. You get nice images of the roads. You can see where there are potholes, and then you get a numerical value for each road as far as what needs to get repaired immediately, what can wait a couple of years, and what's in good shape. So it's a nice tool, nice visual aid to guide us when we decide what roads to work on. So it'll be interesting to see and compare what the roads look like now after we've had a few years of planning. So yeah.
And just to roll into the road work, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, the road striping has been done. We've gotten many compliments on that, which is great. We do have some cleanup work to do where we need to fill in along some edges of the road. It's not unusual. It's something that we do every year. And this past week was pretty rough with the storm we had. So we took almost a week to clean up the roads and such, and we probably have honestly 2 or 3 more days to do of stuff that's just hanging that we should take care of.
Which you also got lots of compliments on, the
Yes.
cleanup of the storm.
And Yard Works did a fabulous job. They really showed their skills this past week. They did an excellent job.
Oh yeah, Stacy and I got a bunch of phone calls into the office, so they did a wonderful job.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have driven, I drove down the Quartz Mill Road just across the state border, and that was trees ripped in half. I guess they got maybe a tornado. Melissa, I hope it's not a big ask, but would it be possible just it seems like that $200,000 number that we use each year for snow removal is just an arbitrary number. Would it be, I know and I also realize it's very variable, but how big of a deal would it be to go back a period of time, 7, 8 years, give or take, to get how much we actually spent per year? Is that?
Oh yeah, it's pretty simple.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll get
Okay.
that to you tomorrow. Easy.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, I'd like to take the average and deviations and all that.
It might be interesting to see what the most we've ever spent in a year. You know, like what would be the record? 375,000. What
Yep.
year was that? When was that? 78?
13 or 12, 13.
12 or 13.
I think that was like 14.
Okay. So there's times, I
Yeah.
guess, we get a bad one.
Power out for 4 days.
Yeah.
But Jeff can explain this further than I can because I'm the newbie, but you basically have to bid on the amount of salt you're going to use.
Yeah.
And
Is that the major expense, or is it the actual plowing?
well, it's all combined in, like between the plowing and then the salt cost, the way the budget ran before, it's all calculated together. And then go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just gonna say, last year we used very little salt and it's just because of the weather. But I'll say it again, that salt shed that we now have has been a godsend to us. So I greatly appreciate it. And we've tried to adjust ourselves for next year coming, or this year coming up. So I think we're gonna be in good shape.
Yeah, I just want a comment, and we don't always have to do it this way, but in the past, there was an understanding that there was some extra money put there and that the extra, like, so after the winter, you're getting ready to do the road program, it's rolled into the road program. Like I said, I still think these are good
Absolutely.
questions and we should look. And we could take a different approach. We could take a more realistic number and then just deal with the road program another way. Plus, we're going to talk about MS4. We're going to need money for that. So I think it's nice to know, is there anything there that we could use?
That's where I was
Yeah,
Mhm.
just for just for our sanity, right? Is there something that we can pull on?
Yeah, absolutely. So for this year, we had to pull money from what we didn't spend for the snow removal and put it back into the road program to break even.
Jeff, since you have the mic, do you want to give the road program updates for 2023?
Sure. Again, we probably have 3-4 days to do some filling in along the edges of the roads, but I think every year we get better and better with this road program, and just so happy for all of us. It went so well this year.
It's complete. I've seen most of it's complete though, right? But you have Mackey Court that you mentioned that that's kind of early stages, right?
Right, and the goal was to get that done. That's been this year. That residents put up with a lot over the past couple years, no fault of his own, just being honest.
Do you think you'll get it done, Mackey Court, this year? Is that
I'm gonna press for it.
press? So then we would have completed everything in these tables, right?
Everything except what we're looking at for next year. Just keep in mind on the second page, the last two
I see
items.
Forrest Gump and
Um,
Drive. Okay.
I know I've said it for the past year or two, but they're gonna be expensive. So we may have a very little to no paving next year, depending on how these costs come in.
Robotics will come in handy to figure out, is there something else that we have to look at? Yeah, okay. Is that me? Okay, I'm too busy taking notes. I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. So, we're here. So this report was compiled by the zoning officer, includes the number of permits processed for the month of July. And so in July 2023, there were 8 permits were issued. We received $19,371.35 in permit fees, 0 miscellaneous fees, 0 recreational open space fees, 0 impact fees were collected, and 21 inspections were performed. And I just want to, we don't make money on these fees. So I know 19,000 sounds like a lot of money, but there's costs that are associated with these inspections and the work. So it's not extra money. All right, thanks.
Okay, moving on to some very exciting stuff. I'd like to introduce Supervisor Torres to tell us more about what's going on with our Fall Fun Festival.
Thank you, Dawn. Actually, what I'd like to do is have both Stacy and Jeff give the update. They deserve the limelight here. So if you don't mind.
Hello, Franklin Township. I am thrilled to announce that we have collected and raised over $10,000 for this event. And that is in kind donations as well as corporate sponsorships. So we are happy to use that for our community. Right now we have 24 informational booths and shopping booths that we're going to be setting up so people can shop and learn about things in the area, historical or pro board, everything. So we are also raffling off our beautiful brand new grill. And we might possibly have a ribbon cutting ceremony for our arbor that our Eagle Scout is in development of. We also are going to be celebrating our first responders. We're going to have a Chinese lion dance performance. That's going to be a nice cultural event, as well as moon bounce obstacle courses for the kids, a dunk tank for those brave enough to enjoy it. It might be a very hot day. So we also have our pickleball courts are going to be occupied, and Jack and Beth are going to be giving demonstrations for new people to the sport. We will have hopefully a community kickball game going on between the first responders and the community, as well as hay rides with our very generous John Hawking is going to be providing those. And we're going to have lots of free things while supplies last. So look out for that. But I'm here tonight to really start to push advertising, because right now we are 1 month away from the event. So it's getting down. I'm very happy at the position that we're at. And I'm very thrilled with the amount of free advertising that we have going on. As we were talking before the mics went up, school's about to start. So I reached out to the Avon Grove School District, and we have all 4 schools within the district ready to advertise on their community bulletin boards for us. We also have the charter schools. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but their electronic marquee is now showcasing our event, as well as the technical school on Pennox Bridge Road is going to be advertising for us. I reached out to the libraries and the local churches, so hopefully they'll be getting the word out to their fellowship. And right now we're just looking for volunteers. So you, me, everyone in the community, it's a great opportunity to get out, meet your neighbors, interact with people that you haven't seen. We have a lot of spots. So if you're interested in doing some heavy moving, we are welcome to host that. And we are also looking for just, supervisory roles. If you're looking to help with parking, please go to our website, click on Franklin Fall Festival, volunteer. There's a sign up genius that I created, and there's time slots for whatever time you're willing to commit. We have them at 1 hour each, but whatever you can give, we are happy to have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacey.
Great job, Stacy.
Yes, Stacy's done a wonderful job. Very proud of her. We are hoping too, it's not locked in, but we are hoping that Christiana Life Care Net helicopter will be landing too and participating in the event. But again, very proud of Stacy. We couldn't have done it without her help this year. You've been great. So thank you.
Thank you to Jeff too, who is our in-house graphic designer. I don't know if he realized his talent, but all of our Facebook posts and flyers and our handouts that we're going to be doing at the event are all going to be designed by Jeff. So thank you, Jeff, for all the hard work that you've done.
Nice. We can add creative director to your title. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
It's my turn for Parks Rec Open Space Report, the pro.
Do we
They-
have
They are not on this evening. They wanted me to ask the board if you had any questions this evening to please ask them. They will get back to us. But nothing they felt that the board needed to vote on this evening for anything.
So Jeff, I do have a question regarding the parking lot and handicap spots. Was that checked? Do we have it? Is it properly signed? Are we, whatever?
I've been working on that. I found it's better to actually have the signage than the paint.
Okay.
So I am ordering those. They should be a standard stock item, so nothing we have to wait weeks and weeks on. But yes, it's on the immediate radar.
So was it a gap? It wasn't properly done, or?
Maybe not here. I can't. again, it's nice to have one over the other. So for the time being, until we get the parking lots sealed and painted, this will be a great stopgap measure for it. Yes, and just to let you know too, Stefan has the photos. I think I showed everybody. The tot lot, most of that has been painted by the FSA. They did a great job with that. The mulch went on today. We have a little bit more to do with that. And then the Franklin Preserve parking lot, I would say, is 70 to 80% done. We have a little more to do with that. And we've done a lot of cleanup out there too for the day, with a lot of low hanging branches and vines and stuff. So it's really looking good out there.
It's all gonna be ready for the fall festival.
Yeah, it's great. Hey, John.
Actually, the PC, there's no report, right?
No PC report.
There is no report. They'll probably be excited to know they will probably have a meeting in September or October. We do have a minor subdivision plan that was just made complete this afternoon with their submittal. So we have to send it to the county and our engineer.
All right, then I guess the next on the docket is the Historic Commission report from Paul Legacy. Is he on?
I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we met on August 1st, and there were two main items on our agenda. The first was determining what we would have for the fall festival. And so we have 3 volunteers who will be working our table, and we'll have a number of brochures relating to township history, the general history, the Mason-Dixon line, Ben Franklin's relationship to the township, as well as a brochure about the Historical Commission and some other materials. The other big item had to do with the Big Elk Creek State Park. I and Nan Latimer attended a stakeholders meeting for historical commissions in early July, in which we discussed ways in which the history of the park, the farms, and the other things that have been there could be brought to life as a component of the park. And we also discussed more general issues such as adequate parking and the like. Also, later in that month, I met with Sarah Sato, who is the education specialist for the park, and working with folks in Elk, as well as Emily Kilby, who is the woman who runs the Forgotten Fair Hill website. We will be preparing an inventory of park ruins once the leaves fall from the trees, and it will be shared with the park as well as SMP Architects in early December, at least, or perhaps later December, depending on how things run. But we want to get it to them by the end of the year. And SMP Architects are the folks who are doing the foundational plan for the park. We also, working with Sarah and London Britain, set up a plan so that she can access materials relating to park history, namely the Mason-Dixon line in Art Corner, as well as we have a historical clipping file relating to the damming of White Clay Creek that was provided to London Britain, that I helped create an archive for that. So she will have access to that for educational programs. Finally, on September 14th at 7 p.m. at the new London Township building, there will be a talk on the history of Cape May, and that will be given by Ed Tchaikovsky, who is a resident of Cape May and has given this talk before in Newark, and one of the members at the New London Area Historical Society saw it and said it was very good. So that will be on September 14th at 7 p.m. And that's it. Are there any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Next, we're going to hear from the Franklin Sportsman Association from my old friend Bob Magnus, who I know I am greatly remiss and owe a phone call. I hope to do that by the end of this week, Bob.
Doesn't look like Bob's on.
He's not on. Oh, he's not on. Oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
I better
Uh-oh.
call him.
Well, I will say,
He's obviously not.
So- so I'm certainly not qualified to give the FSA report, but I will comment on some of the FSA activities. Over the past month or so, they've been working diligently on painting the tot lot at Crossan Park. It looks fantastic. You'll notice some blue highlights now that exist on the equipment. That was Bob Magnus's inspiration. So if you appreciate the new blue and green tot lot paint job, reach out and say thank you to Bob and the crew for the excellent work that they did on the tot lot. So thank you to all of them.
And I want to add one more thing. We, thanks to my wonderful friend Stacy here, just got our little tags ordered for our 3 little libraries that makes us official national little libraries with each of their own numbers.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
we should be getting those official things to put on those before our special event.
Very cool.
So they are official.
Huh, that's great.
So my favorite part of the meeting, talking to Andrew regarding Arrow. I know, Andrew, we wanted to meet early in this month, but there was some terrible storms here that stopped that. But I'm hoping we can take some time, first of all, hear your update and then talk about the projects and just get a sense of how we want to proceed. So turn it over to you, Andrew.
Sure. Good evening. Hope everyone can hear me. My name is Andrew Talea. I work for Arrow Consulting, and I have been working this year with Franklin Township on complying with its MS4 permit. So I have a number of topics to discuss. Most of them surround our projects. So I had provided just a memo with some attachments for the workshop meeting. And so what I'll do is I'll go down each of those points and talk about what we've been doing and next steps in terms of where we're at with MS4 compliance. So the first bullet point on the attachment is summarizing that based upon the last discussion, obviously we had talked about, costs associated with the MS4 program, specifically these structural projects that the township needs to implement on a 5-year cycle. And so while we still need to solidify project locations, what we did provide was a number of grant opportunities that really are the annual grant opportunities that come around based upon the time of the year. And so the point here is that there are grant opportunities available to municipalities specific to stormwater infrastructure. I know that we have had success specifically with the Going Greener grant, helping municipalities solidify funding for various stormwater projects such as basin retrofits, swale retrofits, as well as stream restoration. And so there's a lot on that list. I think one of the big takeaways in looking at that at this list is to keep in mind that one, grants open up at different times of the year. And in most of these cases, what these grant applications are going to require is a narrative about the project, site location, but they're also going to request a budget for the project as well as a timeline demonstrating that the municipality can use those funds within the given time frame. So for example, for Going Greener, they want to see how the municipality can use funds within a 12 to 18 month time frame in terms of going out and doing your survey and getting these projects in the ground. So we really have to be prepared with some initial work when we apply for these grant applications. And so, there is going to have to be at least some initial investment from the township to do some initial survey and design work. But if that can occur, then we have an opportunity to apply for some of these for some of these grants. We actually have reached out to a number of these contacts on this list already, specific to next year's grant funding. At this point, we have proposed some potential projects. ERA has proposed some potential projects where, based upon the project type, we have an idea of what kind of projects the townships should at least consider to meet its requirements. So not every grant is going to qualify for the same type of project. And on top of that, too, you will see that in the one column where it states project requirements, there are certain grants that only apply to the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So taking a step back, the township has the pollution reduction plan project, which we've already bought into the Big Elk Creek watershed project to meet that requirement for the 5-year cycle. The TMDL plan is the significant project requirement that we need to meet. Any project requirement where it lists Chesapeake Bay watershed in that column, unfortunately, we may not be able to apply for those grants in order to put a project in the TMDL planning area. So, but I still think that there are ample opportunities, at least for projects that are not restricted to the Chesapeake Bay watershed for grant funding opportunities. And so we also have the opportunity to partner with other municipalities where they may have received grant funding, where they can give us credits at a reasonable cost. Again, for example, the pollution reduction plan, Big Elk Creek watershed project, the cost per pound of sediment reduction is $1.95 a pound, which is a really good cost rate. So if a neighboring municipality has a TMDL plan, which there are a number of neighboring municipalities that do, if they apply for their grant, they may be able to also offer us credit at a reduced cost without Franklin Township actually being the holder of that grant money. Segueing into an email that Jeff Eastburn shared with me just this afternoon, based upon the responses that a number of municipalities provided to Franklin Township, specific to MS4 and how other municipalities are funding and dealing with MS4. There is a neighboring municipality that is doing a joint project with PennDOT and the Turnpike, where they might be open to potentially selling off some credits to Franklin Township. So I think that that's also an opportunity that we should at least explore. The worst that they can say is no, or it doesn't work out. And the fact that if a project is not going to be implemented, 3-4 years from now, that actually works out for Franklin Township, because currently our permit is not approved, so our clock hasn't started yet. So we're going to have 5 years from the time our permit is approved to implement these projects. And every year that goes by is a chance to apply for grants to fund these projects. And the sooner that we have, survey and design, that provides us ammunition to essentially apply for these grant opportunities. But if the grant will be awarded, most likely we'd have to hit the ground running and use that money within a short time period, depending on the grant specifications.
So I have a quick question here about I think it's just I don't understand the different terms. There's a lot of money available for Chesapeake Bay watershed work. And maybe I was wrong, but I thought that the bulk of our waterways were part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, at least some of them. So why wouldn't we focus on those, or what makes the TMDL plan not applicable here?
So the TMDL.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can, if you weren't finished with your question.
No, I think I was done. I think I think I might not have my definitions accurate between TMDL and,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So the TMDL area specifically is the part of the township that drains to the Christiana River Basin, which is east, and
Okay.
the southern half of the township drains to the Chesapeake Bay watershed to the south and west.
All right.
The pollution reduction plan is specific to the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The TMDL plan is specific to the Christiana River Basin.
Okay, so what we need to do is build a channel that connects the northeast part of the township right down, make everything flood into the, okay.
Right. I think that would require some significant permitting, but so just because some of these say Chesapeake Bay watershed, we've already met our PRP requirement. So I really wouldn't focus on us going after those grants now,
Okay.
but they may be valuable down the road to meet the next 5-year cycles requirement. But anything that does not specifically say Chesapeake Bay watershed, CB watershed under project requirements,
Mhm.
they would potentially be eligible for a TMDL project. And again, we've had success with the Going Greener grant. Now there's 2 sections of that. There's one section for the Chesapeake Bay watershed of Going Greener, but then there's another section of Going Greener money that is for any municipality in the state. So you can actually go and look at what municipalities have gotten in terms of past Going Greener money. And it's municipalities all across the state that have gotten anywhere from, $50,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars, to pay for these pollution reduction plan projects. But yeah, but you do have to qualify for the project based upon where you want to physically put the project.
Mhm.
So I think the summary is that there are grants available to the township. And again, our clock has not started yet, so that's a benefit to us. But in order to qualify, we are going to have to do some initial design work to submit with our application for these grants.
Is there, and I mean, maybe this is obvious by the list you've presented here, but with the Christiana watershed, do we have any specific funding sources for the Christiana watershed that might be explored?
So some of these grant applications actually have different watersheds within the grant that, I can't speak for Chester County because they don't have this exact entity, but in Lancaster County, there are different watershed areas that can receive up to a certain amount of money. A lot of these grants don't want to allocate money to just one watershed or portion of the state. So there are specific subsections that would apply to our drainage area. And so what they do encourage is that if you want to apply for some of these grants, they do encourage you contact the person that, like, we have contacts listed there for each grant. I think it's really important that if we solidify a site and know that the township, is going to set aside X amount of money for initial survey and design in 2025, that we communicate that to the contact for the grant, talk about our project, where it's going to be. We're going to have to demonstrate how it's going to improve how everything upstream is being adequately treated already. But I think contacting the individuals who are listed with the grant is really important in order to confirm that your project applies and get some insight into specifically what they're looking for in your grant application. So it's really not just, hey, let's go online and submit it and see what happens. We typically recommend reaching out to these people and kind of talking before we even submit anything to make sure that our projects qualify.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good strategic plan, and I'm glad there are opportunities, but I think we need to assume that we don't get any grants, right? Because we'll have to, in case we don't, hopefully we do. I just would maybe talk about projects, how you go about identifying the projects, because I remember conversations we had before you were involved, and it was like, stay away from stream restoration, do something else, because stream restoration, it can fall apart. You get a bad storm, something happens, you're back to ground zero, and then you have to maintain that. what's your thought process as you worked with your clients on this? Maybe that will help us decide which projects to pick.
So there's going to be pros and cons of every project type. And so regardless of whether it's a basin or a stream restoration project, if this is a project that the township is going to implement and say that there's a catastrophic storm event, it is going to be on the township to remediate that project. Having said that, there are potentially insurance policies that you can get for infrastructure. There also may be some grants that we can use for remediation of stream properties. But I think specifically to Franklin Township, let's just say that we wouldn't even want to do stream restoration. What are our options? I think based upon the second attachment that I provided, which is a list of your existing BMPs that previously were considered for MS4 credit, even if we would make a case where it's going to be significantly higher cost to remediate a stream restoration site compared to a structural BMP in the case of a catastrophic storm event, I'm not confident that even if we would go through with all these stormwater basin retrofits that we have on that we have listed here, that we would even get close to meeting our requirement. While there may be a higher cost to do remedial work at a stream site, I still think the cost of doing that is going to outweigh doing other structural projects where, based upon the dollar per pound, those projects are significantly higher for initial construction than stream restoration. Just looking at the cost a pound per credit for construction, in order to even make a dent in our requirement, we would have to take on projects that the cost would be astronomically higher per pound of credit than doing stream restoration. While stream restoration is not as much of a structural practice as a basin, I still think the overall cost, even in the event of a catastrophic event, is going to outweigh going the other route and utilizing structural projects to meet its 382,000 pounds of sediment reduction that the township has. We actually got that lowered by 20,000 pounds of sediment reduction in speaking with DEP over the last couple of weeks. But still, even at 360,000 pounds of sediment reduction, if the township chose to try to do BMP retrofits of all the basins that were previously proposed, we would only get 41,000 sediment reduction credits on basin retrofits.
So is that our choice? We either do basin retrofits or we do stream restorations. There's no box 3.
So sorry, go ahead. I mean to cut you off.
I think maybe some just preliminary conversations, how we go about this, because I'm hearing a couple things from you. One is we have a number, right? We have to hit that target. So that's a given. And
Right.
I think what I'm hearing from you, even put costs aside, even if all the costs were the same, we don't have enough basin retrofits to even meet those numbers. So you're if there's only 2 choices, basin retrofits and stream restorations, you have to go on the stream restoration bucket. Am I hearing you correctly in order to meet your numbers?
There are some other structural projects such as bioswales, and there's different variations of wet ponds. But in short, in order to meet our credit requirement, yes, those are the projects that we have to consider first. Even like the tree planting effort that even like alternative projects like tree planting, there are other projects, but unfortunately, I think based upon our credit requirement, it'll be extremely difficult to piece those together to meet our requirement.
So Andrew, I guess the question would be, is it possible that we actually can't do enough stream restoration and bioswale stuff to actually meet our requirements? Okay. So that's my question. There's always a stream to restore. There's always so from my perspective, I guess, and I think maybe to Donna's point is that, can you hedge your bet, right? You do some stream restoration and some construction, so you have at least some manner of permanent installation that won't get washed away by a 100-year flood. But But I think from the township standpoint, like the order, it's an order of magnitude, that difference between what these construction projects would be versus a stream restoration.
Right.
So,
Take the risk.
I mean, I guess the path forward is you just go for with the cheapest pound per ton or dollar per ton, right?
Right. So what we did between the second attachment B and then going to attachment C, attachment B is just the base and retrofit projects that were previously proposed. That's not to say we can't build other basins from scratch, but I wouldn't recommend that, at least for a first consideration. So on attachment C, what I have is I've listed all of the property, not all, but a majority of the properties within the township's TMDL area that have significant stream reach on those properties. And the first four at the top are township properties that are owned by the township and that do have significant stream reach on each property. They either have a class 1 or a class 3 stream, which is what you have to utilize for stream restoration. And on top of that too, I actually went out and photographed 2 of these sites. Well, actually 3, 2 in terms of 1020 Wickerton Road and then 91 Parsons Road, which is Franklin Preserve, I believe. So you do have significant stream reach on township properties. And just aside from my site conditions photographs, based upon the linear footage of those streams, what I did was I estimated potential credits based upon the stream reach on site, based upon 115 pounds of credit per linear foot. So looking at those 2 properties where I calculated potential credits, that's almost double what the township needs in terms of its TMDL requirement of 360,000 pounds of sediment reduction within a 5-year cycle. So the good news is you do have streams, and you have streams on township property. And based upon my initial site photographs, I went out, took photographs. I actually took our drone and flew it up and down the stream channel. And there is significant erosion, at a number of these streams. And so just talking with our engineering team, the 2 sites that I listed there, they were confident that based upon the stream restoration checklist, that we would have a chance of saying that these stream reaches qualify for restoration. And we actually have already submitted those to Ian Quinling, who we've been working with, who's been involved in this process, to even know if it's worthwhile for us to submit these streams for potential stream restoration. So in terms of can we meet the 5-year requirement of 360,000 pounds, I think that the answer is yes, potentially, assuming that DEP does not have an issue with us saying we can restore these streams. It's that property at Franklin Preserve is very wooded. So some of the restoration techniques that you would conduct there would be, maybe somewhat different than the site up at 1020 Wickerton, which is also adjacent to other private properties that have significant stream reach that are also in need of repair. So to answer your question, yes, I do think we, at least initially for this 5-year cycle, have some options for stream restoration to meet the township's requirement.
Yeah, and the cost, I mean, I hate to say $1 million isn't crazy, but it's something that it seems doable. I mean, before we were talking $2 million just to do some of the credits. I think here it looks like 639,000 credits, right? Double what we need for 5 years is about $1 million. So that kind of puts it in that $500,000 range for 5 years. So maybe something we can manage.
Yes, and again, those are just estimate numbers.
I know just a guess, right? I know
right.
you have to pimp, and it could be more.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind, like you said, that 639,055 number is almost double what we need. So
So does that, so let's certainly, but that's double what we need for the first 5
Yeah, we
years.
can only do-
Like
First
it just,
5 years,
this
yeah.
doesn't, this is not done after
Yeah,
5 years.
I know.
So here's my other question, and this is probably a bit of a hypothetical, but you're right now, you're going around their township, you get drones looking for projects to help us with our sediment load. My question is, how does the DPEP come up with our sediment load? Because I'm looking at it like, well, they must have done a survey, looked at our streams and said, boy, Franklin Township's eroding and flooding the Christiana waterways. They got to fix all this stuff. It seems like that's not the case. It seems like we just have a certain amount of waterways and we're given plunked down a number we've got to satisfy, whether or not we've got a project to do or not. So once we get through this double, like let's say we do spend $1 million and we get 600,000 pounds of sediment taken, theoretical sediment. It's not even real numbers, right? So we take care of theoretical sediment. What else are we gonna do? I know. What else are we gonna do in the next 10 years that we fixed the streams? So what are we hoping for more erosion so we can satisfy our credits? Or, I mean, I guess I'm probably being a little bit facetious, but it seems to me like this is like a hypothetical number that we're trying to hit. And now we're looking for projects to satisfy the hypothetical number. How long is that sustainable for? Right? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe you don't, maybe it's probably not a fair question for you. It's probably a question for the DEP, but it seems like this is eventually there's going to be a break even point where we don't have a project and we're just going to pay fines or
Dig a hole, fill back out.
right. Like we're going to have to start causing, well, anyway, sorry, I'm
Right.
off my soapbox, but
No, I mean, again, this is something that is not unique to you in terms of that question. I mean, everyone asks themselves the same exact question. There are municipalities that we work with now that are boroughs that have no room for projects.
So that's my question. Like we're all asking this question, except for the DEP who's telling us to answer it, right? Like that's
Right.
the frustrating piece. So I wonder if
It's a federal mandate.
we need to get organized is what we need to do as far as townships and start pushing back a little bit, because to your point, if we didn't have any water and the DEP tells us we got to solve a sediment problem that we don't have, what do? They have to pay you have to pay PennDOT and buy into these co-ops. It just seems like,
And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't
All right.
most of the sediment coming from the farmers? But we have no control over saying what the farmers can do, and we can't say to a farmer if they are majority or whatever percentage of problem, they can, because they're protected under the Farm Act or whatever, so they can take their mushroom stuff and dump it into the water. No one's and then the taxpayers have to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just from my personal opinion, again, I think that that's a common point, is that, look, you are targeting urbanized municipalities, and frankly, Franklin is not even really considered urbanized compared to what most people would be considered, or what most people would be consider urbanized. And so, and yes, it is a calculation done on paper, based upon the overall pollution in these water bodies, the Christiana River Basin and the Chesapeake. It's basically a lump sum amount of pollution that's being calculated, and based upon the land area within different watersheds, they're saying, this is how much sediment is currently being transported from these different watersheds into the end water body. So everywhere is allocated different requirements, unfortunately. And on top of that too, this MS4 program, in terms of enforcement, the ability to even enforce some of this stuff on rural properties, specifically farmers, is somewhat limited. A lot of farmers do have their manure management plans, but there are certainly ways to circumvent that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a common complaint, is that you're targeting only one sector of the problem. I don't think that you're wrong about that specifically.
yeah, I think what's interesting is we're talking about like stream restoration in Franklin Preserve, which is a heavily wooded area already. Like, how are we gonna stick more trees into Franklin Preserve around this? It's, again, you happen to be the face I'm looking at, so it's not you. It's just, it's absolutely bonkers.
What are you mentioned grants earlier. Is there a risk that the grant runs out before we ask for getting some of that money?
For the grants that we have listed, I don't believe that to be the case.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of that money is already allocated and it's going to be spent anyway in specific areas. Like the state has already allocated that specific watersheds get X amount of money under these grants, if it's a state grant or a federal grant. But typically, no, these grant monies we've listed are almost assured dollar amounts, and that money's already been allocated for this purpose.
And the other question I had was with regards to other townships or other municipalities they work with, either of similar size or exposure. Is there any issue with regards to where are they? Because I'm assuming that they are further along than we are since you guys took over for us. Thankfully, thank you. But where are they with regards to thinking about how they're going to finance this longer term when you consider the 368 times 1.74 and longer term, which by the way, I don't know what the definition of long term is, but forever. Okay. Which is 3.68 million times 1.74, which is approximately 6.6 million, give or take, dollars. So when you consider that, and we had our cash report, which said we have $2.2 million in cash. So what are other, long question, what are other townships or other municipalities doing? What are they talking about doing? Are they talking about raising taxes, cutting expenditures, having a line item? What are they talking about?
So one, I definitely think that MS4 and MS4 projects are something that the township should budget for moving forward annually. Most municipalities have a line item budget for that. Some municipalities are just doing this for the first time and they got lucky that they got grant funding, so they haven't even thought about what's going to happen next 5-year cycle. But and I don't want to raise any alarm bells, but some municipalities also have explored and implemented a stormwater fee. I'm not here to debate whether or not Franklin Township should implement one. There are municipalities that have implemented a flat stormwater fee. There are other municipalities that have implemented a stormwater fee based upon impervious surface on your property. Even some of the responses that we got back from some of the other municipal managers indicated that they point to the case in Westchester where the borough has a stormwater fee and the university basically challenged it. And because the university is a state-owned entity, they were successful in saying that you can't apply this municipal tax to us. But I think that does not negate private property owners from a stormwater fee necessarily, just based upon that ruling and my understanding of the ruling. But I would say that definitely putting this aside as a line item, as a budget line item every year, including the compliance as well as the infrastructure, is something that the township should do moving forward annually, at least at minimum.
Yeah, and obviously we've been talking about exactly how we're going to pay for this, and one of the things that I think we've talked about having our local representative in here to talk to him about this, and I think we really need to have a serious discussion about the financial burden that this puts upon a township, particularly. And I can't even imagine, I'm gonna say a township our size, but $500,000 a year forever for something that is theoretical, right? It's not an infrastructure, really an improvement. You can argue semantics, but it's not an infrastructure improvement. It's not a public safety situation. It's $500,000 to appease a DEP or MS4 mandate, whatever you want to call it. Is a significant burden. And there's got to be some way that we can say, look, it's what percentage of our current budget? is going to be going towards this. It's going to be our single, and for Franklin Township, I'm not exaggerating, it's going to be our single biggest infrastructure program every year is MS4. It's not going to be making sure our roads are better. It's not going to be making sure our public has adequate fire and healthcare. It's going to be making sure streams have enough trees around them. That's going to be our biggest expense every year forever. It seems like we need to have a serious conversation with our representative and say, what is it? What are you doing? Because this is going to be something that's
They say they're not going to do anything.
we at least have to make a stink, and we can be ignored, but I can't not make a stink about that.
At some point, I almost think, not now, but at some point, I almost think we need to let the public know what is involved here. So the public can get in touch with Harrisburg or whomever they feel, and explain this because,
Federal mandate. It's a federal mandate. It's been in effect for years.
yeah, you're not on green.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a naysayer. No one's probably more conservative than I am on this board besides John. There is, hey, whatever you guys want to do to fight it, but I think what we need to do is figure out how we're going to pay for it without having to raise taxes. And I know that you'll.
Yeah, of course,
do that.
that's the path forward, but
I know, I hear you.
not without a fight.
Can we test the waters ourselves and say, you're saying we had our waters tested and you're saying we need to remove 382,000, but the way but the way we've calculated the number, it should be 273,000. Would they even listen to that?
I mean, my guess would be by the time you would pay court fees and lawyer fees to make that case, we could have, invested that money in projects. And I'm not shooting down the idea of having representatives in. If the board wants to do that, that's certainly up to you. But yeah, I mean, I think the way that I think about this is a federal requirement passed down to the states. For now, it's not going away. So, but having said that, I do think if the board wants to voice, your opinion to your local representatives, I think that that's warranted. And I think informing the public of this is also, beneficial as well. Not that this is going to solve our problems, but, down the road, there may be some property owners that have, stream reach or infrastructure that can help us meet that requirement. And, as we talked about earlier, while the township does have significant stream reach throughout the township on public and private property, if we can get potentially good rates on cost per pound of buy-in projects like the Big Elk Creek project, if we can buy in to get a requirement and not have to worry about doing it in the township, I think that's also, a win for this as well. And actually, I will be at one of the neighboring townships on a non-MS4 related matter in the coming weeks that also has a TMDL plan. So if the board wishes, I'd be happy to mention to that manager that we potentially would be interested in discussing a partnership because they have a TMDL plan as well. There might be an opportunity there to potentially get some credit without doing a project in the township potentially.
So Andrew, in terms of next steps, and I think this is what you've been trying to head towards for a while, you have to, none of these are good, they're on paper, right? They're things you've thought out, but they have to be approved by DEP. So somewhere, our next step is to, as you work on the permit, these projects have to be put into that document, right? And then we even have to find out, and I think you put in more than what you need, right? So you can pick and choose later. But that's kind of what you're heading towards, right? You need to get our okay to say these projects are reasonable. Please put them in and see if DEP will agree to them. Is that our next step?
So right now we have been working with DEP to ask them questions about our draft reports, which they have been answering. And the one thing that DEP did say is that before you officially submit your report, which you were talking about, if you want to send us information, questions, pictures, do that. So we have sent them some information about the streams that we've listed here on our project list. So right now we're waiting to hear back from them to see if they have any objections to potentially including these projects in our TMDL plan. If they would say okay, and if the board would have no objection to it, our next step would be to submit one would be to advertise our draft TMDL plan to the public for 30 days. And then after that, submit it to DEP for official review. And again, I think DEP has given us leeway where we've shown them over the past, since we met them back in March or April, that we've made a lot of progress since then. And at this point, they haven't come down and said, hey, turn the report in. So there isn't a hard pressed deadline to get it in. Again, our clock doesn't start until it is approved. But at some point, we do have to move forward and submit these projects for review for potential implementation to meet our requirement.
And you would submit all of them, right? You would submit the whole table, or would you pick some out? Like, what?
Our recommendation, yeah, based upon our conversation with DEP, there's no downside to submitting more projects. But what we would do is anything on the attachment C table listed as HP for high priority, those are the projects, the stream reaches on township property, some stream reaches on private property that are either adjacent to township property or all do have class 1 or 3 streams that could be restored. We would list those as our priority, and then everything else we would just list as alternative. So if we wanted to swap them out, we could, down the road. Just because we submit a list of here's our priority projects, here's our alternative projects, does not mean we're going to be held to those for the next 5 years. We can swap those projects in and out as we go. But yeah, at some point, if the board has no objections to the projects we've listed to meet our requirement, then I would recommend that we would submit our combined TMDL and PRP plan, listing these projects, also listing the Big Elk Creek watershed for the other PRP requirement, and then DEP would have the ability to approve or deny our permit, and then our clock starts.
Would you also put in the retrofits, even though they would be on low priority? Would you?
Yes, we would.
So you put it, okay.
All right, so is there anything else we want to talk about? I think I've soapboxed enough.
No insurrections.
No insurrections. We'll be good. So anything else on the MS4 projects before we move on? All right.
So Andrew, do you have what you need? I mean, you'll just continue to work on the way you've been doing it, right? Just continuing to look at these projects, continue to put information together for DEP?
Yeah, so right now we're waiting to hear back from DEP about the stream photos that we submitted. So I would say next step is to receive their comments, and then I could provide an update at next month's meeting to whether or not they responded or not yet. And then we could potentially go from there.
So I guess the guidance is we're going to go for the cheapest, dollar per pound of sediment programs with an eye towards projects that would be attractive to funding sources. Is that kind of the thought, or?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So right now, I think based upon the dollar per pound of credit received, our opinion would be propose these stream restoration projects. And then from there, if those projects would get approved by DEP, then it would be for the decision of the board whether or not to move forward with initial, survey, at least an initial survey effort. We don't have to, pay for a whole full design up front. Step one could be doing a topographic survey, even some initial design work, because really you're not going to know exactly how many credits you can get until you solidify a stream restoration technique, and that's part of the design process. And part of that design process is getting the initial topographic survey, doing a soil survey, doing some wetlands investigation. I know that there's wetlands down at the Franklin Preserve, and then basically outlining a plan about how you're going to, potentially preserve the natural state while introducing, restoration techniques. If there's meandering streams that need to be rerouted, that'll play into the calculation. So yes, we are proposing, at least for now, stream restoration to meet the township's requirement, just based upon the cost per pound and based upon the overall, at least the 5-year restoration requirement of sediment.
Yeah, I don't want to make it even more negative, but all that's additional cost. So all that work has to be done before you even start paying for it.
Yep.
So that all gets added on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're not helping, Donna.
Eating the bear here.
All right. All right, well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. And thank you for letting us yell at you for undeserved reasons for 30 minutes or so.
I'm used to it. It's okay.
All right, thank you. So thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Appreciate your time. All right, so we're gonna move on to business. We just need to we have our solicitor's report with Guy Donatelli.
Mr. Chairman, I can be brief. There's nothing on your agenda, but there are three things I think I'd like the board to know. One, taking off on our agreement with PennDOT, I was asked, where does that stand with PennDOT? So Mr. St. Clair and I reached out. I included the operations manager in that email exchange, and he evidently had was not aware he had the materials. I resent them to him. He said, "Thank you very much. I'll put a change order in with the vendor." So we've done what we need to do with PennDOT. But and that was about a week ago. Recently, my partner Vince Pompo has been working with Mr. Corbett on your sewer ordinance. And that was pushed out today, I believe, and I think Stan and Jeff may have gotten that this afternoon. So that will be something I think that we anticipate you'll be able to address at your September meeting. And just Melissa and I have been working with Mark Gordon on several items, none of which are particularly complicated, but they're moving along as best they can. They involve certain citations and other forms of requests by your constituents for direction on particular permits and things of that nature. So it's been I don't want to say it's been a slow month, but it's been a slow month.
But you had the hearing. Did the hearing?
The hearing was postponed.
Oh, okay.
Due not at our request, but as I understand it, due to one of the other party's medical condition. And so Melissa has been in touch with the magisterial district judge. And I know Mr. Gordon has been out discussing that issue with the other owner of the property. And I guess we could report all the animals are gone, which is a good thing. Yeah, and we're simply trying to get that buttoned up at the court level.
And then my other question, PennDOT, has DEP approved their plan? Is that still being reviewed?
I think that's still up in the air. But he did tell me in writing, he's going to put in a change order with the vendor to include Franklin. So everything that you have needed to do, we have done and in good faith. And so I'm comfortable with where we are.
Thank you, Guy. So with that, we come to our second public comment. This public comment can include comments on anything attendees might want to share. Commenters must state their name and whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer of the township. Do we have any public comment? All right.
My name is John Auerbach. I'm a Franklin Township resident for 45 years, and I'm a resident taxpayer. Comments I'm going to make are related to the MS4 compliant. They're intended to be helpful and supportive and not critical. If it comes across as critical, it's not intended to be. Until recently, the long-term scope of work associated with the cost of compliance for MS4 have not been clearly defined. Although tonight's engineering report does not define a specific scope of work, the information clearly indicates that costs to Franklin Township will be significantly outside the annual budget. A bit of history could be relevant. In 2015, LTL indicated that the estimated long-term cost for compliance to MS4 could be $2 million over 10 years. With consideration to the discrete cost per stream application presented, this bygone estimate may be within reason. the 2 million, if you use that number, is about 200,000 a year. It's approximately equivalent to 6% of your annual budget. So not a minor budget impact. So my professional project experience tells me when an unexpected, unbudgeted cost appears, the active cost control is warranted. The objective is to carefully review the proposed spending to year end and identify opportunities to reduce costs. You have 4 months of spending till you get to the end of the year. So you might want to take a look at the budget and see what is something you can do in advance of that. This activity should be initiated as soon as possible to start building a reserve. A quick way to start the process is to copy the current budget into an Excel sheet, add fields to the right, and establish a rough coding system of cost records. And then you can sort the data by some priority, and you identify what items could be reduced, eliminated, or adjusted. Some can't, obviously, but others can. But you have to pick through the budget to do that. Just related to Franklin's taxes, Franklin already has the highest overall tax rate, EIT, and real estate of all the surrounding townships. So a higher tax rate would be unwelcome. Additionally, the Avon Grove school taxes will continue to increase 3 to 4% a year, at least for the next 8 years, to pay for the new school, creating a local tax revenue vacuum. Eventually, you'll be able to develop an MS4 expense plan for the future years, and you talked about that tonight. The plan is to clearly outline the annual revenue required. In the interim, cost control is the best path forward. So just start to get onto the budget. And just related to grants that could really help you. When we got the Hess Mill Bridge, that project cost was $405,000, and we got a $271,000 grant, which was 67% of the project. So there's real money available in these grants. So I would not bypass that at all. Just another comment I heard that the ARF, the American Rescue Funds, I believe they must be spent by 2024. Melissa can, and I think you got to account by 2026. That's what I recall when we were doing the budget a few years ago. Federal government requirements is a gross overreach designed to control people and reduce their economic status. My political statement. Related to grants, it's another political statement. They take the money away from you in taxes, and then they dribble a little bit back to you with all kinds of requirements and pull you through a knothole. It's just unfortunate. The stream restoration appears to be the only way you can go, but it's a non-durable BMP. So if you go that way, then you have to be aware that there are significant maintenance costs related to big storms. Thank you. Good meeting.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate your comments.
Don, you missed one part with the grants, because they make you, like you said, they take the money in taxes, then you go for, they dribble it out, but then you feel good when you get the money.
Yeah,
And it's amazing, and you feel great.
They dribble it back is the way. The rest of it goes into some other slush funds.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you for your comments. All right. So with that, I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at what our time is at 8:23 p.m. May I have a second? Second. All right. Thank you, Stefan. Any discussion on adjourning this meeting? I don't think so. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Good night, everybody.